Hello, my name is Chris Asaro, and I am president of Holt Construction. Holt Construction is one of the country's leading builders, and we are especially recognized for our work in the aviation sector with a large portfolio in the Northeast as well as across the country. We have been working at Newark Liberty International Airport for over 30 years, and our offices at the airport are always open to you. Holt is very committed to diversity and including small and local businesses, especially MWBEs, local businesses, and veteran-owned businesses in our projects. Our work also supports local residents to help them build a career in construction. This year, we have launched a new program, Building Newark Airport Together. That features special sessions every Friday, noon to 1 p.m. These sessions provide you with important information about contract and career opportunities and will open the gate to building your business and your career with us.
Thank you, Chris. I'm Alexandria Parati, and I am so pleased to serve as your program host for our Opportunity Friday series. Opportunity Fridays are important sessions that will introduce you to what you need to know about working with Holt Construction, as well as the specific contract packages that are available for bidding on Newark's new Terminal A. We also want local residents to learn more about how they can work in the construction industry with Holt, as well as on other projects. As an organization, Holt Construction is truly committed to building Newark Airport together. Each of our Opportunity Friday sessions are devoted to specific topics and include an opportunity for live questions and answers. At the end of each information session, we will review direct contract opportunities that you may be interested in bidding once you have pre-qualified with us. So let's get started with today's session. Getting found, certifications, codes, profiles, and commercially useful functions. Good afternoon, and welcome to today's session, Getting Found, Certifications, Codes, Profiles, and Commercially Useful Functions. To work on Newark's Terminal A, you have several requirements. First, you must be certified by the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and you must be pre-qualified by Holt Construction. So what does that really mean? This session is designed to help you understand the variety of certifications available to you, how to manage the certification process, and how to update your certifications, along with your codes and profiles, to ensure that you are listed properly in the available public sector directories. How you describe your firm's services and experience, as well as the NAICS codes assigned to your certification and profile, is key for contractors identifying you and using your certifications in their utilization plans. In addition to understanding the importance of codes and profiles, this session will also include an overview of commercially useful function, CUF, and how this principle aligns with your codes and the services you provide. This session will also cover certification basics and also introduce other certifications that private owners might be seeking. Now, let me have our panel self-introduce and tell you a little bit about themselves. Lorraine, could you start?
Sure. My name's Lorraine D'Angelo. I'd like to say I'm a recovering lawyer. I spent 21 years in commercial and construction litigation before going in-house for a large global construction company to build out their ethics and compliance program with a heavy emphasis on the MWDBE programs that they were participating in. And for 7 years now, hard to believe it's 7 years, but I have my own compliance consulting firm that helps firms with MWDBE issues, among other things.
Charles, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Charles E. Williams III. I say that out of respect to my father and grandfather, who were senior and junior, not because I'm trying to build myself up. I'm a partner at the law firm of Bakar and Abramson, which I assume many of you have dealt with or know about. I've been a partner for over 25 years here. Before joining Bakar and Abramson, I was the first vice president and general counsel of the New York City School Construction Authority. I also held positions as a general counsel of the New York City Housing Authority, and also of the Department of State of the state of New York. I say that because it gives me experience both working for private construction firms, but also working on the government side of the construction industry. So I have a degree of insight into what government officials and regulators think about when they're dealing with private construction firms. In addition to our firm representing major corporations such as yours, I also personally represent MBEs, WBEs, and also surety. So I've had a chance to be exposed to just about every aspect of the construction business.
Great. I am so excited. You both have so much knowledge that you could share with our audience today on certifications, NAICS codes, commercial useful function, which is always, lots of people have questions, and it's always hard to find answers to those questions to the satisfaction of the person looking for them. So I am so excited to have both of you here to help us demystify all of these questions that our audience is going to have today. So let's start with the first question, Lorraine. Why is certification important?
So I'm a certified WBE firm, but the certification itself gives you a head up in some of the programs and the government programs. And I'm sure everybody who's on the call today knows that certain goals are set on the projects, and then the contractors, the prime contractors, and some subcontractors have to look for and seek out MWDBE firms to work on those projects. So certification will get you on the list. Without the certification, you're not getting on the list itself.
Charles, would you like to add to that? Why are certifications so important in the construction industry?
Well, the thing is, as Lorraine was saying, that one of the important factors is that governmental projects have goals for participation by minority, women, and disadvantaged businesses. In fact, with the new infrastructure legislation, they specifically put into that legislation that the disadvantaged business requirements of the federal government will apply to this multi-billion-dollar project. Therefore, to become part of that, it is to your advantage to be a certified firm. And I say it's to your advantage is that even though you may be a member of a minority group or a woman or a disadvantaged individual, for the purpose of satisfying a governmental requirement, if you are not certified by the appropriate certifying entity, in this case, the Port Authority, the fact that you are who you are does not matter. You have to have the certification to be who you are for the purpose of satisfying a goal.
Now, Lorraine, while we're talking about certifications, there's a lot of information that's required when you go for your certification as an M or a WBE or an SDVOB. Do you have any advice for subcontractors who may be applying now or wanting to apply on how to put together all of that information so that they can successfully obtain their certification?
Sure. I mean, there is a lot of information. They basically want to know who your firstborn is, when you're filling out the information. But they are going to ask you for information about when you started the corporation, how did you fund your corporation, who are the officers, directors. They get into all the nitty-gritty of the company, who makes the decisions and things of that nature. So my advice when you sit down to do the application, before you sit down to do the application, is to go through and look and see and gather all that information in one place, and mostly in an electronic file, because you can then upload all of that information into the certification application itself. And I would, and even if you apply for certification with the Port Authority, other certification agencies pretty much require the same information. So having it all in one place is very useful in making multiple certification applications. So I would parse out the information in terms of corporate records, like they're going to want to know your certificate of incorporation. They're going to, if you're an LLC, they're going to want to see your operating agreement. If you're a corporation, they're going to want to see your bylaws and your stock certificates and the stock ledger. And so it's very minute, all the information that they request. So if you have it all in one place, divided by financial resources, operational resources, corporate resources, information about yourself, your resume, they're going to ask for your resume and that kind of information. I found having it in one place is one electronic file that is kind of like my master file. So if I was like applying to college, it would be the uniform application.
I know that college application well. It does help to have it all in one place. I agree. Charles, there are so many different certification programs. How does the definition of disadvantage impact a company's certification?
Well, the thing is that all of these programs are one way or the other based on the assumption that the categories included in this, whether it's a minority, a woman, or others, have been disadvantaged, which allows them to receive a benefit. The point is that when you have a certification, you are getting an opportunity to receive contracts that people who have not certified cannot get. And I guess one phrase that you may have heard is, especially when they talk about minorities and to a lesser degree women, is reverse discrimination. That you can't give one person a benefit over another to their detriment. But the idea of being disadvantaged, the Congress, because this is really something that's based on federal legislation generally, even though there is state legislation, but a lot of the programs that you're dealing with, if you're talking about Terminal A, are federal programs, is that Congress has recognized that certain groups that are listed who can be certified have suffered a level as a group, a level of disadvantage, have been sufficiently disadvantaged to justify giving them an advantage in getting contracts that others who are not certified cannot go for, cannot receive. So that's why the disadvantage is there, because that legally justifies giving a preference to the certified firm over a non-certified firm.
So can I just add to what Charles said too? It was a great explanation, but in terms of disadvantage business enterprise program is a specific program that's run by the US DOT. And that also has limitations on gross revenues and personal net worth standards. The Port Authority has different certification programs, the DBE program being one of them, the M&W program being others, the small business program, and each one of them has different eligibility requirements. So when you're applying to those programs, you need to be aware of those eligibility requirements.
Great. I always say to our project managers and our employees at Holt that when you're building these large terminal programs, or you're building a high rise or a hospital or whatever in someone's backyard, and you're not affording them any kind of opportunity, it's not right. So it's something that Holt we put into our subcontracts as a trickle down, the goals that we have, and we don't look at them as, that we have to do it. We look at it as it's the right thing to do for our programs, for our employees, and for the communities that we're building in. It's such an important thing to make sure that, we're doing right by the people that are going to be using these facilities. So that's something how I kind of like to explain it to our people, so they understand that it's not just a number. You're not just trying to make a percentage. You're doing good work. I have a question, Charles. It seems like certification is more than just an application. I know Lorraine said all of the paperwork that goes to it. Do you need to hire an attorney, or do you need to hire someone to help you with your certification? Do you recommend that, or do you think that it's just a choice of the individual?
Well, I recommend it, but also I recommend that if you're talking about an attorney or you're talking about a consultant, that they specifically know about dealing with certification as an MW at DBE. Because one of the things you have to understand, I mentioned that I spent a number of years in the public sector. The people who are doing the certifications and approving certifications generally have no experience in the private sector. And generally, unfortunately, they have limited, if generally no experience in construction and how construction operates. So one of the things that you may have, and I've seen this happen, where people will feel that they can describe or have documents that you might use in the context of talking to another person in business or to talking to another person in the construction trades, who will understand words that you choose to use that the reviewer or the evaluator for the certification may not understand. And what they will have quite often is a directive that was given to them by someone else who doesn't understand business or construction, and they have key words. And if you choose the wrong key word in describing what you're doing, it can deny you certification. I had an example of a client who was working, who lost the certification, was denied certification by the Port Authority because while she had owned the company, she had management of the company, she had control of the company, she had an outside investor who specifically said, you control everything in terms of running this business, but if you want to dilute my interest in the business by selling shares to someone else, increasing the number of shares, selling some of your shares to another woman, whatever, I want to be consulted. And they chose the word of calling that a major decision. The Port Authority's book said for their people who were doing the reviews that major decisions were contrary to having the proper management and control of the company. Even though they specifically wrote in, I was not the lawyer, let me say this quickly. I'm not the lawyer who wrote these documents. I was the one who came in and tried to fix it. But using a term, which is a normal business term, if you have in a privately held corporation, someone who's investing who isn't involved in the day-to-day operations, they want to make sure that you will not dilute their interest in the company or sell out from under them or do something of that sort, which is normal, has nothing to do with having the control that you need to be a certified firm. But by choosing the wrong word, it literally denied this woman-owned business certification for a year because that was the next time she could come back. And by then we rewrote the documents so that they could pass certification. But she lost a year of certification just by choosing the wrong word. And you need someone going through this process who understands it, who has been through it, because you can't expect that person who is reviewing it to automatically understand what you are doing or just say, oh yeah, I know you're a good person or this, that, the other thing. Fine, I accept your descriptions.
So I just add to what Charles said, because I've seen firms usually get to a lawyer or a consultant after they've been denied certification. It makes a lot of sense to go to them, to Charles' point, before you even submit your paperwork for certification, because someone like Charles or myself will be able to say, this may cause you a problem at the end of the day. Take another look at this. Make sure your resume adequately describes your field experience in addition to all your other experience, because technical knowledge is an important aspect of being certified and in the agency's determination as to whether you control that business. And it's particularly relevant in the construction industry because there are many construction businesses that are family owned. So even the transfers that go between a father and a daughter need to be particularly looked at if you're going to pass muster in the certification process. So go
Just-
before, not after.
Let me add something to what Lorraine is saying. What I tell clients all the time is, and Lorraine's a lawyer, I'm a lawyer, whatever. We've been doing this for a very long time. We can come up with great legal arguments for almost anything, all right? That's what we do. That's what we get paid to do. But the one thing we cannot do is change the facts. So if you present the facts behind your claim to certification in a way that is defective, we can try and run around it, but we can't change it. And just remember, there's an old saying that I was told early on, when you talk about whether you should go to a lawyer or do it on your own, he or she who represents him or herself has a fool for a client.
I've definitely heard that one
So
before.
think about that.
I've definitely heard that one before. So we can weave in the next segment by talking about when you're filling out your application, using the wrong words. I've seen in my experience by looking for firms to bid on our projects, firms using the wrong NAICS codes. So, and I've talked to a lot of firms when they did use the wrong code, because I'll call them up and I'll say, you're bidding on this, but you don't have that code under your, you're not authorized for that. So why are you bidding this? And they'll say, oh, I do this work, but I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to fix that code when I created, my profile or whatever. So Lorraine, how important are those codes for them for the subcontractors to enter the right one and all the right ones and not skip one or enter a wrong one? How important is that?
It's like key, because like the certification itself, if you're not in the list and you don't have the right code, the contractor is not going to be able to give you that work, because the contractor is only really allowed to count the work that you do that's within your code, right? That's really the general rule of it. So you really need to pay attention to it. One time I had a contractor, I was trying to give out work for a large project in the city, and the contractor came up to me and said, I do this, I do that, just exactly as you explained, Alexandria. And I said, well, what's your NAICS code here? And it was a code starting with 541, which is a management code. And I only know that because that's the start of my code. But I said, I can't give you any construction work because you don't have the right code. So you need to have the code and the business description of the work that you actually do. And you need to pay attention to it. And if you go to your certification analyst and it comes back that he didn't give you a code, you need to find out what you need to do to get that code. And it's often that you need to prove prior work in the code in order to get the code qualifying your work. But it's key to it, because if you don't have the certification and you don't have the right code, you're not going to get the right work.
So Charles, since we just talked about NAICS code, and the codes are national, so it's the same code across the country for, if you're a demolition contractor in New Jersey, that's your code. If you're a demolition contractor in California, it's the same codes. What does the NAICS codes mean as it relates to commercial useful function? Because I want to go into commercial useful function, what that means, how to make sure a company is providing a commercial useful function on your job site, so that our audience understands the codes, how they relate to commercial useful function. So can you explain how that weaves together?
Well, the idea of commercially useful function is that once you have a certification, the agency that certifies is just saying that we've determined basically that this entity is owned by an individual who qualifies as someone who can be, well, I'm going to use disadvantaged to cover everything. that you would meet that disadvantaged category that allows you to get the benefit of certification in terms of how it will get you contracts that you otherwise would not get. But once you get that contract, then the question is whether that certified firm can do the work, can perform the scope of work in the contract that is being awarded. Because if the firm cannot perform on their own, without any help, without any outside support, the scope of work of the contract, the Holt will not get the goal. You will not satisfy the goal for the value of the contract. So you will not get the contract value. And one of the ways to measure whether or not a subcontractor or whatever, consultant or whatever you're choosing, will be performing a commercially useful function is to look at the NACE code that applies to that contract. And what does that require them to do? And they're going to have to be able to do it. And they're going to have to be able to do it on their own. And they're going to have to not only, they may have the basic skills, but they have to have the skills, the workforce, the finances for the to do materials, the finances to pay for a job until you receive your first or your next payment to keep the thing going. Because if they don't have that, if they have missing any one of those elements, they won't be able to perform a commercially useful function. For example, I had a client who had the skill set to be able to perform a contract of a substantial amount of money. The problem was it was very labor intensive. And probably if it had been more a question of material, the cost of material over labor, he may have been able to work that out because he had, a payment record, and he could have possibly gotten some deals in terms of when he had to pay for the materials or pay, a little bit extra or a premium or whatever. But it was labor intensive. And he figured he could not pay, and he was a union contractor, which he had to be for this job. He could not pay the salaries and the benefits for that 60-day period, crossing his fingers, that it would be from the time he had to show up on the job to when he would receive his first pay. And he had to do that to perform the commercially useful function, because he knew that his line of credit was not enough. Obviously, he didn't have the money in his pocket, but the line of credit was not of sufficient magnitude for him to be able to carry the workforce he needed to be able to do the work before he received that first payment. And he walked away because he knew that he could not satisfy the commercially useful function requirement. Which, Justin, I'll keep talking for a moment if you'll let me, which that points to that decision of commercially useful function is tied to what your procurement people do generally when they make decisions about whether a subcontractor can perform the scope of work of a contract that they are considering awarding to. Because it's really the same, and that piece of it is your certification as an MWDBE does not get over the requirement that you would still have received a contract of that magnitude, even if you were not a certified firm.
So
I like to think of the certification process as the foot in the door and whether they could perform a commercially useful function. I define it generally as performing, managing, and supervising the work using your own labors and materials and equipment, or procured labors, material, and equipment. So essentially, to Charles' point, you have to independently manage your own work, your own workforce. And if you look to like 5 different areas, you're looking to your workforce, you're looking to your ability to have a labor force, workforce and labor force. You're looking to your ability to get materials to the project as and when needed. You're looking towards having the equipment to perform the work, and then the supervision to process the work in accordance with the schedule itself. Trucking is a whole different issue, but we don't have enough time for that.
So we sometimes at Holt, we get some complaints because our pre-qualification process is very detailed. I will say we do look under the hood and we do ask a lot of questions, but we do ask a lot of questions of all of our firms because we want to make sure that, they're doing the work that we need them to do and everything is on the level of, what it's supposed to be. But and Charles, I've always tried to explain commercial useful function to our project managers, to our procurement teams, our estimators, and our company as a whole, so that they understand, what it means and why that's so important. What are some tips you think that they could look for to see a commercial useful function violation, or maybe a perception of one, something that would send up red flags that our audience could look for if they had a question?
Well, first of all, like I said, for the people who are doing the procurement, I guess you have the procurement department, then you have the on-site folks. Procurement is to see that this firm has performed successfully contracts of the magnitude that you're about to award, or close enough that you would think that they had the capacity to expand, but not expand beyond a reasonable amount based on that. The other thing that you would want, I guess, if you're a part of the procurement thing, is to look at how much work they have going at this point, to make sure that not only in the specifics of this contract, but in the aggregate of all the contracts that they are performing at the same time, they would not be overburdened by taking on the new contract that you're going to bring to them. If I'm talking to the people who are on site, what you start looking at is you want to see who are the people who are actually there performing. Do they make sure that they are the people who are the employees or folks who are from the union assigned to this contractor for this job, being managed by this contractor and paid by this contractor? And the same thing in terms of suppliers, who is supplying, who is bringing it to the job, and that these are people who are dealing with this contractor. And if they have anyone who is, any equipment that's being used, whatever, that everything gets tied back to the contractor who's the one who received the contract. And a lot of times I would think the people who are on site have some sense of who's who in terms of the folks who would be there, who would be delivering, who would be doing this work. And if something doesn't fit for what you would expect for this sub doing this amount of work, that's enough of a red flag to say, we've got to look behind this and get some answers.
So before we close up and we go to the current opportunities at Terminal A, need some final advice to our audience about getting found, their codes, their profiles, and the way which they operate their business, especially in light of commercially useful functions. So Lorraine, some last words, tips, anything you can offer for our audience?
Yeah, I think the audience needs to know that they have to understand the rules and regulations that they're operating under, and what is required to participate in that program. And if they have any questions before they submit the certification papers, that they should be seeking counsel or advice as to whether or not they're compliant with that program's regulation. And then the second piece of it would be to be transparent. Like if there is something that you believe happened that violates one of the rules, you shouldn't keep it a secret, but you need to raise it with, whether it's the prime contractor or the agency itself, you need to raise that issue and figure out a way to move past it. Because many firms have been caught in situations where they haven't been transparent with the agency and resolved an issue before it morphed into a much larger issue. Seeking advice is always a good thing, as there are multiple people within the agencies themselves who are considered the agency's experts when applying their rules and regulations. And get all those certifications you can.
Charles, some last comments, some words of advice, wisdom from you being in the industry for so long for our audience to help them?
Well, the thing to understand, I mentioned that I had been was in the public sector before I joined Picard and Abramson. The difference between the public sector and the private sector is this. The public sector is driven by process. The private sector is driven by production. So if in the private sector, basically, if you're producing what people are asking for, they may not give you a real hard time about some of the process that got there, as long as, no one's coming after them and they're not having people put handcuffs on someone or whatever, that the process can go by the wayside. The production is important. It is the exact flip when you talk about the public sector. The most important thing to them is, first of all, if you don't produce well, I guess I'll tell you a little, a story that kind of graphically said that I was working on a project with for a company that is not a competitor, but I'll say a competitor of yours. And there was a fellow we were sitting around talking, and he was talking about his first job with with a prior employer. He had been working on the build out of a casino in Las Vegas. And they came to the point where the casino was supposed to open for the 4th of July. And he came to a meeting and they said, hey, we want to open this casino on Memorial Day rather than the 4th of July. And he said, well, we can, but we're going to have to go to acceleration and extras and whatever. And it could cost you an extra $300,000 to $500,000 to do this. He said the clients, the guys who were going to be running the casinos, started laughing. And he wondered why they were laughing. They said, we'll make that on Friday night. So the cost didn't, the thing was producing what mattered. But think of the flip side of this, and nobody likes to talk about this, but when I was at the School Construction Authority, we would let out contracts to open a school, all right? And everybody wanted the school to be open. We knew it would be good for the community, this, that, and the other thing. But if the school didn't open on September 1st, 2021, it would open on September 1st, 2022. And while someone may have been somewhat upset about it, life went on, whatever. But if you did not have in your file all of the documents that you needed for explaining whatever an auditor would do, because everything gets audited, and it may be audited a year, 2 years, 3 years afterwards, you could be in real trouble. The most important thing for that guy, when the casino guys were to open on time, the most important thing for the SCA, even though we wanted to open on time, but to make sure when the audits that always come, that in our file, we had every piece of paper that we had to have. And what I say, especially in dealing with companies who may not have, smaller companies, who may not have dealt in the public sector, you better go back to day one of your company and make sure you have every document that you could possibly think of to track how you started, who put up the money, whose money was it, how you invested it, how you handled capital calls, how you did all of the things that you did to get you to where you are now, and have documents for each one of them. And if you don't have them now, you better go back and recreate them. Because without that, even if you could say, well, I know how to put up that wall, I know how to do whatever, if you don't have that piece of paper, you are not going to be successful as a to get your certification, or afterwards for the position of a Holt, if they don't have that piece of paper, you're not going to get the credit for satisfying the goal that you thought you were about to get.
I smile when you talk about public works versus private work, because before I came to work for Holt, I worked for a company that only did school construction work in New Jersey, and it was very paperwork driven. And when when I came to work for mostly private companies, it was exactly as you said. It's the product that matters. Like, what do you mean you don't want the, all of this paperwork? I am great at paperwork. That's what I do. So yeah, it's definitely culture shock going from public to private and vice versa, private to public, because we do public work at Holt too. And we make sure that our project managers that are going to be doing the public sector work are versed in that paperwork and that documentation. And as my father always says, and he would be so proud for me to say it, but it always made my hair on my back of my neck stand up. I's dotted, T's crossed. And that was exactly everything in writing, everything in perfectly done. That's how I was trained. So it is a different culture coming in from public to private.
Along that line, one of the biggest challenges, especially for small certified firms, is whether they have the back office to do the paperwork for public work. And a lot of them do not. And if not, even if you start off doing okay, there's going to be an audit at some time, and especially if you have retainage, and that retainage is important for your business to stay in existence. You may not see that retainage if somebody comes in and says, well, where is this piece of paper? And you can't produce it. So it is, one is you have to understand the process. And for especially a smaller company, you have to ask yourself, do I have the capacity to produce that paper? And if I don't, do I have the source of funds I need to create that capacity? Because if you don't, you are just headed for a train wreck that you don't want to be involved in.
Right. Well, I think this conversation was great, and I think we're going to have a lot of questions coming in from our audience. But before I get to the live Q&A, let's go through the current opportunities at Newark's Terminal A. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. Before I bring back Lorraine and Charles, let's go through the current opportunities at Newark's Terminal A with Holt Construction. Project number 1 is a large and exciting project. It's a 60,000 square foot ground up construction, which includes a lot of high-end interiors. The project includes the following trades: civil and site utilities, site capture and site enabling, foundation work, cleaning labor, materials and equipment, structural steel, masonry, concrete, elevators and escalators, metal panel systems, curtain wall systems, roofing, storefronts and exterior doors, drywall, ceiling systems, miscellaneous metals, which includes ornamental metals, millwork packages, as well as casework, tile and stone, terrazzo flooring, painting for walls and ceilings and wall coverings, sprinkler systems, plumbing, HVAC, electric, and fire alarm. The core and shell for this large project is currently out on the street. So please make sure that if you are a core and shell or a heavy site civil contractor, you make sure you have your pre-qualification applications in and approved with Holt Construction so that you could be part of this exciting project. The interiors and all of the other trades will be released in mid to end of Q2. So please make sure you too also have your applications in and submitted so that you are part of this great, exciting project at Newark's Terminal A. The next package, which is out on the street now, is project number 2. It is also listed on our website, all of these projects. I know I can be a little fast. So if I'm a little fast, please make sure you go to our website. They will guide you towards all of these opportunities and you can see which one is best for you. But project number 2 is broken out into 2 packages for a lot of inclusion on this job. Package number 1 is it's an operational space underneath the terminal. We're looking for the following trades still: masonry, doors, frames, and hardware, window treatment, and there's a signage package that's going to be released. The signage package is not ready, but it is coming. The second portion of project 2 is a 35,000 square foot club and terminal fit out. It's expected to be released in May, so you have a couple weeks, but make sure that you have your applications in and they are approved. In package 2, in the club space, are the following trades: demolition, cleaning labor, miscellaneous metals, structural steel, millwork, roofing, fire stopping, fireproofing, doors, frames, and hardware, architectural metal and glass, carpentry, ceramic tiling, terrazzo, finished flooring, painting and wall covering, high-end wall covering, high-end millwork, toilet accessories, toilet partitions, food service equipment. There is a large food service package here. Window treatments, HVAC, plumbing, sprinkler systems, light fixtures, electrical and communications cable. That is project number 2, which is also listed on our website. Project number 9 and 10 has already been bid, but we have 6 packages that we are currently under rebid. So this project that I'm going to give to you is project number 9 on our website. It is a 7,300 square foot airline lounge. It is rebidding in early April. Only these packages are rebidding in April. Cleaning labor, steel, millwork, custom and casework, flooring, which includes carpet, tile, and VCT, mechanical systems, fire alarm, and sprinkler. The last project that I'm going to read to you is project number 10. That project is bid already, but we have 4 trades which are rebidding. Those trades are the following: it's cleaning labor, it's security, audio visual, and fireproofing. So if you are any of those trades, please make sure you check our website if I read it a little fast, and you get your pre-qualification applications in and approved with us. Again, to get a pre-qualification application with Holt Construction, you send an email to ewrta@holtcc.com. I'll have our consultants put that in the chat again. Send us an email, let us know what your trade is, and we will send you off a link so that you can join our Building Connected system. And now let me reintroduce Lorraine D'Angelo and Charles E. Williams III. Thank you both for joining us again. We have a lot of great questions for you today. It's a bright, sunny afternoon. It's April Fool's Day, so hopefully we won't get any funny questions in the chat, but you know, it is that day, so let's see what happens. So the first question that we got is, what is the process we need to follow to get certified by the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey? So before I answer that or give it to our panel, any questions that anyone may have with a specific authority, you can email us those questions for the Port Authority or for any other authority, and we will forward those questions off to them, because we really can't speak to specifics for that agency, but we can give you our experience with them and what's included. So Lorraine, you're certified with the Port Authority or any other agency. Could you give some insight into the process?
Yeah, so the Port Authority I put in the chat, and I think you guys put in the chat the actual link to the certification page for the Port Authority, which is, you know, that has all the information, and you could actually go create an account and log in, and then you're able to actually view the certification application. You're going to need to have your information gathered in the way that I suggested you gather it, organize it according to categories of documents regarding your incorporation, your financial, the number of employees, all of that information, because you'll need that to actually submit the application. But the certification page has information about what is actually required in order to certify, and I would suggest you go there. There are also small business development centers and procurement technical advisory centers that can also provide you with some advice about the certification process itself. But it basically, they need all of the information related to how your business was formed, what kind of resources you currently have regarding labor and materials, and all of those things that I mentioned initially.
And Charles, any tips for, I know that these applications can be a little daunting and there's a lot of paperwork that goes to them. I mean, there's even a lot of paperwork that we have for our own pre-qualification. Any tips for, what they should do besides what what Lorraine already said?
Well, I think the thing is, which I talked about earlier, is being sure you understand what you were being asked. Because you may read it and you think they're asking for X and it's really Y. And if you go to Y, once you put it in, you can't pull it out, and you may have a problem either in terms of getting it past the first step, or if you get to the point where you have an inspector or someone who comes to view or question you or look at your operation, if what they see does not reflect what you wrote because you misunderstood the question, that in and of itself could be a basis for turning you down. So it is really, because I have a client who I've represented for years who has had certification as a WBE, that they now have a second corporation, and we've been going back through it. Even though they got certified for their first, they misunderstood the questions and they were submitting the wrong information, which if it had gone in would have been a disaster. You have to, because sometimes, since they may not understand your business, or your business may not be quite what fits into their mindset or what's reflected in the questions. In this case, my client was a manufacturer as opposed to a construction contractor. Interpreting how you, as a manufacturer, you respond to a question intended for a construction contractor presented real problems. So we ended up, and actually we haven't even finished. We're still going backwards and forwards. So make sure you understand what you're being asked for, so you'll be giving the correct answer for your company.
So it's kind of like what we say here at Holt Construction. When you write an email or when you compose your meeting minutes or whatever, don't just write it for that reader. Write it for any reader so that they could understand what you're trying to say. It makes sense. Charles, this one is specific for you. Does commercially useful function relate to whether credit can accrue to satisfy goals for MWBE or DBE?
Yes, because without showing that you're performing a commercially useful function, 0 credit for a goal. Okay. The credit for a goal is tied totally to commercially useful function. And for example, if it was decided that the way you were conducting the job, let's say you had a $100,000 contract, but they figured what you actually were performing was $50,000 worth, the goal would only be satisfied to the $50,000, not to the $100,000. Commercially useful function is the deal. It is the determinative factor.
Okay. And just to follow up on that, Charles, why is making sure that every company on your project is providing a commercially useful function? Why is that so important to any contractor or any entity? Why is that so important to make sure that everything is on the up and up?
Well, the thing is that if it isn't, that's it, at a minimum, a breach of the contract. If you, for example, if you come in and you have a goal of X, you give a utilization plan, we identify the companies that are going to perform the work, and you go forward And that's part of, that's part of the proof for you to get your contract balance at the end of the day. If, let's say, especially since most, major contracts, you got substantial retainage, if it is determined that you failed, that you said that something, well, using my 100,000, 50,000, and you said it's 100, when they gave you the contract, they decide it's 50, 50,000 comes out of your retainage. They'll say that, you misrepresented, we can take that 50,000. So your collection of your balance at the end of the job. And the worst case scenario is if it was determined that there was collusion between the contractor and the sub to pretend it was 100,000, you may be talking to prosecutors. And that's literal. I mean, that's real. That's just not something a hypothetical I'm throwing out. We have represented clients. Right now, my firm has a white collar unit just because of those experiences.
So one of the things that I want to add to that is that you have usually in the process when you're making a request for payment, you're making a certification as to compliance. And those certifications are sometimes different, but they incorporate compliance with the regulations. So not only when you make that certification, it is important for you to understand how you as a small business can operate under the agency's rules and regulations too.
Great. The next question is, can you provide contact info for the presenters in the chat? So I'm going to allow our presenters to decide if they want to put their information, their contact information in the chat. If you have any specific questions for each of our presenters, you could send them to our EWRTA email and we can forward them off to them as well. So please, if we, sometimes we're not great at typing, I'm not great at typing in the chat. So you could always send us an email and we can connect you with our presenters today. If you have if you're shy and you don't want to ask the question, I know a lot of us are shy. So again, anything that we don't get to today in the chat or the questions, just feel free to send us an email and we'll be happy to have that question answered for you. The next question, can you provide more specific instructions where we may find the opportunities and package that I mentioned previously for the current opportunities to bid? So if you look into the chat, there is a website there. I'll read it off for you. It's diversityagenda.com/EWRTA. You go there, there's an opportunities tab. You click on the opportunities tab and all of the opportunities for Terminal A for Holt Construction only. I want to make sure we say this is for Holt Construction only opportunities. Those are there clear on our website. And again, if you have any questions, any problems with the website, we are here open for engagement with you. So make sure you email us at EWRTA@holtcc.com, and one of us that has our entire Newark team there, one of us will answer your question. The next question is, what documents do I need to provide to potential clients that I am certified? So Lorraine, when someone wants to be certified with a company, they want to prove their certification, what should they give to that company to prove that they are indeed certified with all of these different entities?
So each entity treats the process somewhat differently. Many times you will receive a letter with an accompanying certification that says you have been officially certified and your certification is valid through X date. Sometimes they don't even provide you with that you just appear on the appropriate certification website. So you could provide that letter or that certificate of certification, or even a screenshot of the agency website information that shows your firm comes up as a current certification, current business certified by the particular agency.
Great. And I think that answered our last question too, Lorraine. You hit them both in one shot. That was great. So I think that is actually, wait, there is one more that just popped in last minute. It seems like certification is more than just an application. It's a business decision. Who can help me make the right decision so I'm properly certified? So Charles, for you, quick question. When someone's looking at what entities to certify themselves with, is there any best decision-making skill that they can use if they want to be certified with each entity? Because I know that every application is huge and it does take people a lot of time to fill these out. Is there a best way to pick and choose, or is it really what's up to the contractor themselves?
No, the thing is that the certifications are, the certification that matters is the agency or funding source for the contract you want to work on. All right. So if you want to work on a Port Authority contract, you have to be certified by the Port Authority. If you want to work for the MTA, you should go to the MTA and be certified with them, even though I guess you could do in terms of their multiple, well, there are 4 in New York State if it's on a federally funded transportation project. But in the metropolitan area, you really talk, your best thing is probably to deal with the MTA. Would you agree with that, Lorraine?
Yeah, the MTA, the New York City DOT, or the Port Authority all have reciprocity when you're dealing with the DBE program itself, transit, aviation, or highways.
Yeah, but you have to make sure, for example, that you are applying to what the one where they have the agreement for cross honoring, because they also have individual programs, and then they have the programs that are respected by all of them. And then depending on what the funding source is for the project you want to be qualified to serve to satisfy a goal, it may be different than the other. So it is challenging. I understand, but I think the thing that you should think about is what is the funding agency for the contracts that you generally go for, and start there. And then
Right.
once you have one that you've been successful with, you can start walking from that to others that you think might be a source of the funding for the contracts that you're going after.
Right, and that's the reciprocity is key. Some agencies take a lot longer to certify a firm than other agencies. I think the state is backlogged now for over 1.5 years in terms of how long it's going to take them to certify you as an M&W under the New York State process. You also have to check the eligibility requirements, because some of them, like the DBE program, has limitations on how much in personal assets the 51% owner can have, or how much in gross revenues the business can generate in a given time frame.
Great. So I wanted to thank our panelists. That is our last question for this afternoon. Thank you, Lorraine D'Angelo, founder and president of LDA Compliance Consulting. And thank you to Charles E. Williams III, partner at Picard and Abramson. Thank you both. It was a great,
One final point, if you just go to Picard and Abramson online, you will find how to reach me. That's the easiest thing to do. If you just Google Picard and Abramson, you will find out how to get directly to me, and I'd be happy to respond to you.
That's great. Thank you, Charles. And thank you all for joining us this afternoon. This was an amazing session. Happy Friday, everybody. Join us next week. We have another amazing session on your business strategy. What is the best plan for your company? So if any of you have any questions on putting together a business plan or a strategy for your business, please join us. I will again read our opportunities off to you and be here live for the entire hour to help you with any pre-qualification questions you might have. Remember our email address and our website, which is in the chat. Have a great weekend. Have a great weekend, Lorraine and Charles. Thank you all.